Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the second book of Kings with chapter 19. We will study now the second half of chapter 19, where we hear the response of God through his prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah, to the king's prayer, to Hezekiah's prayer. We hear God's response. Hezekiah has just prayed to God in the glory of God, for the glory of God. He humbled himself before God and asked that the people be saved from the hands of the king of Assyria. And now Vayishlach Yeshayahu ben Amoz, Yeshayahu the son of Amoz sent a message El Chizkiyahu to Hezekiah the king, saying, Lemar as follows. Ko Omar Adonai Elohei Yisrael, so says God, the Lord of Israel. Asher hispalal to Elai, that which you prayed to me. Remember, we emphasized in the last podcast that it was key that Chizkiyahu, the king, pray on behalf of the people, not the prophet. Prophets playing games with their gods, prophets with a small p, is a trick that the idol worshippers did. Yeshayahu made the point when Hezekiah sent messengers to Yeshayahu and said, you pray to your God. Yeshayahu refused to respond. He refused to respond because he needed to make sure that Hezekiah would learn the lesson and know that he as the leader needs to humble himself before God and pray. That's the kind of prayer that would be listened to. Not some kind of a magic trick that the prophet has some kind of a special key, special incantation, special ritual that he can do before God and bring about some kind of a great outcome. But the king has to pray. So it's Asher hispalal to Elai, that which you prayed to me, you the king prayed to me, El Sannecherib, regarding Sannecherib melech Asher, the king of Assyria, Shamati. That's the prayer that I heard. We just read verse 20. Verse 21, this is the word that God has spoken regarding him, the king Sannecherib. Now there's a difference between you, King Chizkiyahu, and Sannecherib, king of Assyria. Sannecherib, king of Assyria, is still living in the world of idol worship. The world where one has to sacrifice to his idol. My idol is better. My ritual is better. My prophet is better. My wizard is better. As opposed to Hezekiah, who prayed to the glory of God, the creator and the heaven and the earth. The one who wants us to humble ourselves before him and live by the ways that he commanded us. Right? So this is now that there's that difference has been established. Now God will say regarding Sannecherib, who's a mere human being, God will say as follows: Bazal lecha, lo agal lecha besulas Patzion, the virgin daughter of Zion. In other words, the young nation, the people of Israel, they are despising you, hating you, right? They are making fun of you. They're laughing at you. Right, Acharecha Roshenia Bas Yerushalayim. The daughter of Jerusalem turns her head around to look at you and behind to scoff at you, to make fun. Et miche rafta v'gidafta. Who is it exactly that you are going and saying these terrible blasphemies and taunts against? Who is it that you're saying these things against when you sent Rav Shakeh to say these things? Va'al mi harimosakol. Who are you raising your voice against? V'tisam romeinacha. And you lift your eyes up high and look up to the skies as if you're the greatest. Al Kedosh Yisrael. You are saying that about the Holy One of Israel. That's what you're doing. Bi'ad malachecha chirafta Adonai. In the hands of your messengers, you have blasphemed against God. Vatomer, and you said to yourself, you said about yourself, Berov richbi, with all of my chariots, ani alisi, I have climbed the heights, Merom harim, I have climbed the heights of the mountains, Yakasei Levanon, the mountainsides of the Lebanese forest. Ve'echros komasar azov mibchor beroshav. I cut down the great cedars of Lebanon, the choice cypress trees. V'avoam alon kitzo, and I have come to the edges of the forests, Yar Carmelo, and I went to the deepest forests. We know the Assyrian Empire was very much responsible for the devastation of the Lebanese forests. Isaiah discussed this in the book of Isaiah. Now Isaiah is saying this again. You think you're such a great guy because I climbed the mountains, I chopped the big trees, I made the big chariots, I'm the big. You're looking up at God. And you think to yourself, Ani karti v'shasisi mayim zorim. I dug great wells and drank the waters from all kinds of foreign places because I'm so great. I conquered all these lands and dug all these wells and springs. Achriv b'chaf p'amai kol yorei matzar. All of the rivers of Matzar, I was the one that I dried them up with my works and my the soles of my feet. Says to Ishayahu, that's you. Who are you talking against? Thinking of all these great things about yourself. Halo shamata lemerachok osa asisi? Haven't you heard all of those things that you're bragging about? I was the one that made them a long, long, long time ago. I was here long before you, and I was the one who created all of that. Vitzartia. I was the one that fashioned it. Ata havesia. I was the one that made this happen now. I'm the one that's responsible for creating a world that works this way, not you. I was the one that brought about the situation that led to you having these wars and allowing these cities to now be destroyed. It was me that created the world, not you. Who do you think you are, God is saying? It's because of me and because I created these things that the residents of these lands were so frightened of you, and they had literally of their kitzriyad, which literally translates to short hands, which means they had no power to overcome you. Chatu, and they were afraid and they were embarrassed and ashamed in front of you. Hayu esev sodev yirakdeshe. They were like just grass to you, in front of you. You know, it's not your might. I was the one that created the world. I was the one that was responsible for you becoming a mighty power and trampling your enemies. You didn't do anything. You're not the mighty one that conquered all those gods and did all these grandiose things. It was me that allowed this to happen. Chatzir gagos. People like the people that acted in front of you, like the chatzir, the drying grass that people leave to become hay on their roofs, ukshidei fall ifnei kama, or the grain that becomes dried out before it becomes completely fully grown. V'shivtecha v'tzeischa. This is verse 27. Where you reside, v'tzeischa uvacha, and your comings and goings, yadati, I know them. I know exactly what you're doing all the time. I know your comings. I know your goings. I'm the one that allows you to happen. I'm the one that made this happen. And I also know how you are angered against me. And therefore, verse 28, because you are now blaspheming me, because you are angering me. And now I'm looking down at you and I see, oh, you are resting in peace. You think everything's so peaceful and great because you've got it all. That came to my ears. I see it. I recognize that guy who's living with such comfort. He's saying such things about me. God's saying in the words of Isaiah, I'm going to put my hook in your nose. That's referring to the nasal ring that was used as a chain to drag slaves with in those days, so that they couldn't escape. God says, I'm going to place one of that in your nose, Sannecherib. I'm going to put the bridle in your lips, just like the bridle is placed in a horse to lead it. God said, I'm going to treat you like my animal, like my slave. I'm going to drag you right back on that road that you came to attack Jerusalem. I'm going to drag you right back to Assyria. This is what God says regarding the king Sannecherib in response to the prayer of Hezekiah. But remember, first Hezekiah had to say the prayer, because if Hezekiah would have acted in the same way as the other kings and appealed to his God in the same manner that the other kings appealed to their God, God would have allowed Sannecherib to continue. To continue on his path and destroy Jerusalem. It's because Hezekiah turned and recognized that this God, his God, is a different thing completely. His God is not just a God that you have to find the magic prophet for, or the God that you have to say the magic formula for. But his God is the creator of heaven and earth, to whom one must be humble before him. Because Hezekiah recognized that, God therefore looked at Sannecherib and said, it's time for you to go. And then the prophet then turns to Hezekiah and says as follows. Because Hezekiah is now thinking, well, just leading Sannecherib back, that's not good enough, right? The entire countryside is devastated. Everything of value has been completely wiped clean. Jerusalem is surrounded by walls. How are we going to survive? How are we going to rebuild? And he says, V'zelecha ha'os, and this is the sign for you, that when Sannecherib turns around, that God is with you, and that God listened to your prayer. He didn't just turn Sannecherib around, but he will provide for you. He will bring the nation of Judah back. Because what's going to happen? Achol hashanah sofiach. This year you will be able to grow, to eat. Maybe not a lot, but you'll have enough growth in the fields that grow wild that people will have food to eat. Uvashanah hashenis sochish. In the second year, you will still be able to eat those things, and hopefully you'll have enough then to even plant for the future. Uvashanah hashlishis. And by the third year, you'll have enough to ziru, to plant, v'kitzru, and harvest, v'netu chramim, and replant those vineyards that were ravished by the Assyrians, v'echlu priyam, and you'll eat their fruit, and all will be well. V'yasva pleitat beit Yehuda, and the remnant of the house of Judah, right, will then continue, will be able to grow. Hanishara shoresh lamata, that which is remained will be able to grow as roots in the ground, v'yasafri lamala, and therefore bear fruit above. This is classic Isaiah language, classic Isaiah poetry. Ki miYerushalayim tetzei she'eres, because now it's just in Jerusalem, but from Jerusalem the remnant will go out. Ufleitomei har Tzion, and the refugees will leave the mountain of Zion to repopulate the entire countryside of Yehuda. Kinas Adonai tzivos tasezos. It is the jealousy, literally it would be jealousy, or the anger, or sometimes translated as the zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. In other words, it's because God wants to demonstrate that which you prayed for, that he is the one true God, and Sannecherib will be humbled before him. And now Isaiah in verse 32 turns again God's words to the king of Assyria. Therefore, because of all that I have said, so says God to the king of Assyria, regarding the king of Assyria, Lo yavo el Yerzos, he will not enter this city. V'lo yaresh sham chetz, he won't even shoot one more arrow. V'lo yikadmena magain, he will not come to the city with his shields. V'lo yishpoch aleh solulah, he will not put up a siege ramp against the walls of Jerusalem. Baderech asher yavo, the same road that he took from Assyria to here, Ba Yashuv, he's going to turn around and go right back. V'el ha'ir hazos lo yavo ne'um Adonai, says God, to this city he will not come. V'ganosi el ha'ir hazos lahoshia, I will protect this city, Jerusalem, in order to save it. Lima'ani, for my honor, u'leman David avdi. So here, God seems to be saying that the people themselves don't necessarily deserve to be saved based on their behavior. And when we look in the book of Isaiah, we remind ourselves of the kinds of injustice and cruelty and that existed among the people of the time. They weren't exactly the most righteous, but God says, in my honor, I will save the people of Jerusalem. Vahi balayla ahu, and it was on that night, and Jewish tradition has it that this was the night of Passover. Balayla ahu, that night. Vayetzei malach Adonai, and the messenger of God went out. Vayach b'machnei Ashur, and he struck down in the camp of Assyria. Mea shmonim v'chamisha elef, 185,000 soldiers died. Vayashkimu baboker, when they woke up in the morning, in other words, those that were not killed. and all of them, or they, meaning the people of Israel, woke up, and all of the army soldiers were dead, lying in the camp. Those that had laid siege to Jerusalem. The tradition, the rabbis point out, of course, that here it says the Malach Hashem, the messenger of God, as opposed to the same night many years prior, in the night of the Exodus of Egypt, when it was God Himself, not a Malach, not an angel. Here it was an angel. This plague is recorded in historian Josephus, and it was recorded also in the Greek historian Herodotus, and they related it to some plague of mice. Herodotus talks about some mice that overran the camp, which leads some to suggest that this was an outbreak of plague, of the bubonic plague, which we know is carried by fleas that live on the backs of rats and mice. Certainly a possibility that this was a great plague that broke out. How exactly God achieves his justice is obviously something that he has many tools in his box, and bubonic plague is certainly one of them, which would also explain why Hezekiah, as we're going to learn soon, the king Hezekiah, was also ill at this time and had some sort of a skin lesion, which we're going to get to soon in the upcoming chapters, which might have been the buboes that come on the skin of people that are infected with bubonic plague. Some have suggested that. Whether it's true or not, no one will ever know, of course, but it's certainly an interesting suggestion. And the fact that historians relate this to some being overrun with mice or rats might lead one in that direction. Vayisa vayelech, because Sannecherib had just suffered this tremendous blow, he therefore traveled, turned around, and he went back. Vayoshav Sannecherib melech Asher vayeshev b'Ninveh. Sannecherib, the king of Assyria, went back to Nineveh, which is modern-day Mosul. Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, he returned. Of course, it's well known that in the on the walls of the palace of Sannecherib, the king of Assyria, in modern-day Iraq, these the writings have been uncovered in which Sannecherib brags about how he ravished the cities of Judah, and he talks about how he locked Hezekiah up like a lion, like a bird in a cage, right? But then he doesn't say anything about conquering Jerusalem, and which jives very well with what we just read here. Sannecherib, of course, wouldn't go back and write a relief on his walls bragging about how he left in humility with his tail between his legs. So he just bragged about how he locked up Hezekiah in a siege, which he did. But then the siege ended. But of course, he's not going to brag about how the siege ended, and that of course makes a lot of sense. Thus, significant correlation with extra biblical sources with the events as occurred, both confirming that there wasn't, this not that we necessarily need confirmation, but it's interesting anyway, that there was the siege, and there's much archaeological evidence of the destruction wrought against the land of Judah outside Jerusalem and so on. And the king Sannecherib was bowing and worshiping at the house of his idol named Nisroch, his god. V'Adar Melech v'Sar-Etzer bonav, and Adar Melech and Sar-Etzer, his sons, Hiku b'Chorev, assassinated him with a sword. It's potentially, the assassination often happens when a king is perceived as weak, when a king suffers a tremendous defeat. So one would imagine that this weakness leads to mutiny, and potentially that's why they killed him. But then Vehema nimlutu eretz Ararat, they then ran off to the land of Ararat, probably somewhere in modern-day Turkey. Vayimloch Asar-Hadon bonav tachtav, and Asar-Hadon then became king. Another one of his sons became king after Sannecherib, and Sannecherib is now gone as the king of Assyria, as the prophet had prophesied earlier in this chapter. This concludes chapter 19. Thank you so much for studying chapter 19 together with me. Looking forward to studying chapter 20 and the rest of this beautiful book of Kings. Have a wonderful day.